Good evening, everyone. It's Dr. K's. So we're here at the last week of class. So I hope everybody has had a fruitful and eventful 7 weeks. All right. So last week, as I said, all right. So make sure you get all your work done. Make sure you get all your deliverables in on time. Um, I won't be accepting any late work from weeks 1 through 6. Uh, all the work that's late that I'll be accepting is only week 7, basically, and then week 8 ends this Sunday at midnight. So I believe you to get anything that you got to get in um, as early as possible, so I can get it graded and get your grades to you by next week. Okay. So this week, gonna finish up with global HR. All right. There's also another PowerPoint that's assigned for this week on labor and what you call it, negotiations as far as uh, labor relations. Excuse me. All right, I was having a hard time remembering what I was reading. So labor relations and what we call uh, what is the term I'm looking for? Collective bargaining. There it is. Okay, I'm sorry. Collective bargaining. Okay, so make sure you read up on that. It's a good read, good information. Just talks about how collective bargaining is done and the approach that they use to get things settled, right? But this week, as I said, we're going to talk about global HR. And the reason I chose to do global HR is because of the nature of what we do as a society and the way things are going as far as us being more globalized, right? More and more, um, we're getting more connected via the internet, and just becoming a closer knit environment, and things aren't as separated as before, right? So it's easy to be working for a company um, who has multiple locations all across the globe, and you're dealing with different people from different environments, and you have to learn how to manage them, right? How to manage their currency, how to manage their pay, how to manage their vacation time. So, you know, um, we are starting to really become, you know, operate as one entity. Okay. So when we look at HRM in the global environment, foreign countries can provide a business with new markets. Companies set up operations overseas because of lower labor costs. And technology makes it easier to spread work across the globe, right? As I said before, technology is what ushering this push for global HR, right? The ability to reach out to other countries and tap into their resources um, can be a leverage point for countries all over. I mean, companies all over the world. Okay. Uh, so here we have a kind of a call center, right? Which we kind of would expect to see, or a lot of times when you call certain companies, they have their call centers in India, right? Because India has a plethora of engineers and folks that are really good on a technical aspect, right? So they outsource that particular customer service piece, and then not only get a cost savings, but they also provide jobs and excuse me, and a steady wage for those folks in India, um, so they have a job and they can stay home in their own country, right? But we still have to learn how to manage their HR requirements and their needs. Okay. Global activities are simplified and encouraged by trade agreements among nations. And these trends and arrangements encourage international trade, the increase and change demand of HRM. Okay. Organizations need employees to understand the customers and suppliers in foreign countries. Organizations need to understand the laws and customs that apply to employees in other countries, right? So we have to understand what are the customs, the values, the morals of a country that we're in, right? Same thing we've been preaching for the past 7 weeks, right? You want to, act global, but think local, okay? Act global, but think local. It's okay to want to branch out into other countries, but before you do that, you really have to understand where you're going to, what are the barriers and challenges you're going to face. Is the reward worth the risk, right? Because it's not only business things to worry about. There's political, socioeconomic things. There's religious aspect that you have to consider for some countries, right? So you have to be careful where you go. Okay. So if we look at employees in international workforce, right? Parent country national employee who was born and works in the country in which the organization headquarters is located. Host country national employee who is a citizen of the country other than parent country in which an organization operates a facility. Third country national employee who is a citizen of a country that is neither the parent company nor the host or the employer. So you got a couple of different types of nationals and type of workers, depending on if you're from the particular country and you work there, but you work for an organization that's outside the country. If you work for, in the country and you work for an organization that's outside the country or inside the country. So there's different categories, okay? When organizations operate overseas, they hire a combination of parent country nationals, host country nationals, or third country nationals. Expatriates or expats, employees assigned to work in another country, right? So you'll hear that term a lot, expat. And, if you go to other countries like Dubai or, anywhere really, you'll find a community of expats, right? They typically tend to be around the same area as far as, where they live. They live in, work in the same place, and they have a lot of things in common. So they try to, you know, um, form their networks within that community, but they also form their networks with people that are from the country, right? You want to, immerse yourself in the local environment, right? So there's levels of global participation, okay? All right, so let's look at the parent country. Domestically, we're talking about corporate headquarters. International, right? We're talking about corporate headquarters, but has a foreign subsidiary. Multinational, corporate headquarters, all right, but foreign subsidiaries, more than one. And then we have global, which has a corporate headquarters, but the host country has foreign subsidiary that kind of share resources and go back and forth between each other as far as personnel and all the other things that they have, right? International organization that sets up one or a few facilities in one or a few countries, a few foreign countries. Multinational, an organization that builds facilities in a number of different countries in an effort to minimize production and distribution costs. Global organization that chooses to locate a facility based on ability to effectively, efficiently, and flexibly produce a product service using cultural differences as an advantage. All right, so when you look at all these organizations and all these setups, right, you got to figure out, okay, which one's going to make the most sense for the company, all right? You may want to go multinational, right? But that may not necessarily be in the cards because, the resources or the barriers to entry or, the government, right? You may not be able to do that, right? You may have to set up something else, maybe a global organization, right? Or maybe you have a couple of reps or something and not necessarily a full presence there, right? And so you have to really look at, what it is that you're getting into and kind of, what makes the most sense for you based on the resources and some of the requirements and criteria that it takes to go into another country, right? Transnational HRM system makes decisions from a global perspective, includes managers from many countries based on ideas contributed by people representing a variety of cultures. Decisions that are outcome of a transnational HRM system balance uniformity with flexibility, all right? So when you got a transnational system, you really have a conglomerate of different folks, right? It's very diverse and you're getting ideas from, from many different walks of life. And the more, diverse and the more, you know, um, differentiated that the people are within your workforce, the better it is, right? Because you're going to get thoughts and ideas and coming from different cultural perspective and different lives that are going to enhance that outcome, that product, that service, because then it will appeal to more people because more people have contributed to it. You understand what I'm saying? So there's certain elements of a product, good, or service that is contributed by a particular person from a particular country. And that is because they know that that will appeal to the people within that society, right? Within that particular environment. And so it's good to have um, a group of folks that are from different places. And the transnational system is kind of like where we're going to, right? Where it's a lot more global. Different players is, it's domestic in some ways, but for the most part, we have a lot of folks from different countries, and we want it that way, right? We want to have diversity in our organization. Some factors that affect HRM in international markets, of course, culture. That is always a consideration and something that has a huge impact on HR, especially in international settings. Education, right? Education levels are different everywhere, and so the requirements, the rigor, it varies from country to country, and this is why a lot of people come to the United States to come to school here, because the schools are a very high standard. They go to England, France, they go to these other places, right, to get their learning from a higher institution. Okay, so education is a big deal. Economic systems, right? How do we, manage the economy that we are in as compared to the economy that we have people working in? Okay, and how do those economic conditions affect our business, right? As far as affect the workforce that we have. Okay, political legal systems, right, are different all around the world. So you have to be cognizant that there are huge disparities between our legal systems. Okay, what's legal over here may be illegal over there. Okay, and vice versa. So you have to be aware of the legal environment and things that you can get into, or can't get out of also. Okay, when we talk about culture, we talk about a community set of shared assumptions about how the world works and what ideals are worth striving for. Culture can greatly affect the country's laws. Culture influences what people value, so it affects people's economic systems and efforts to invest in education. Culture often determines the effectiveness of various HRM practices, right? So we see this in different countries, right? Specifically, we may look at regions where we look at the Middle East and we look at, North America, right? And say, okay, this is the difference in culture in many aspects, right? We have a little more freedom of religion here than they do in the Middle East. We have, a little bit more appreciation for individual rights and that kind of thing. When our society is not necessarily based on religion, the legal system is different, our infrastructure is different. The things that we prioritize based on our culture in the United States, a little different than what they do in the Middle East or in Africa and some other places, right? So it's important to understand people's culture and what that means in the sense of employing them and getting them to work for you in an international setting. Cultural characteristics influence the ways members of an organization behave toward one another, as well as their attitudes toward their various HRM practice. Culture strongly influences the appropriateness of HRM practices. Cultural difference can affect how people communicate and how they coordinate their activities, right? So again, culture has a lot to do with, how you communicate, who you communicate with, all right? So in certain countries, if a woman's in charge, that's probably not going to happen, right? Um, it's not, it's just not an acceptable thing for a woman to be in charge of a man um, in certain countries, okay? Or there may be a system where the older folks are revered and respected and thought to be the kind of the elders and the leaders, whereas the younger folks are here to listen, follow, and to grow and get better experience, right? So culture has a lot to do with, has a huge impact on the decisions that people make about where they work, how they work, right, when they work, right? Now let's look at Hofstede's 5 dimensions of culture, okay? Individual and collectivism, right? So basically, these dimensions of culture um, describe these individual characteristics, and they give each character a score for each country, um, based on how each country scored, in those categories, right? So individual collectivism, if we think about that, right, is the country a more individual state? The individual culture, right? Is it more about me, and then my success will lead to everyone's success, or is it about collectivism where we care about the group more than just the individual, right? So describe the strength of relation between the individual and other individuals in society. Power distance concerns the way the culture deals with unequal distribution of power and defines the amount of inequality as normal. Uncertainty avoidance describes how culture handled the fact that the future is unpredictable. Masculinity and femininity, the emphasis a culture puts on practice or qualities that have traditionally been considered masculine or feminine. Then long-term, short-term orientation suggests whether the focus of cultural value is on the future or the past and the present. Okay, so you have these different dimensions of culture, right? Different um, elements or different lenses in which you can evaluate a country and to figure out how close it's this country's values to my values, right? Which ones are vastly different, right? What are the things that are highly valued in that particular culture as far as the dimension? And then is that something I can leverage, or do I need to change that or make some amendments to how the way I deal with things based on those categories, right? In Taiwan, a country that has high collectivism, co-workers consider themselves more as group members instead of individuals, right? And so, if you have high collectivism, then it's all about the team. It's all about the group. It's all about the country, right? If we think about countries like Japan or China or even Korea, right? Um, the Asian culture is very much about the group, the greater group, the great, not the individual. What's gonna work well for the group? How can the group benefit, right? Not just one person. Organizations must prepare managers to recognize and handle have different cultural differences, recruit managers with knowledge of other cultures, provide training. For expat assignments, organizations may need to conduct an extensive selection process to identify individuals who can adapt to new environments. So one of the things about working globally is the ability to adapt and assimilate very quickly, because it's not easy to go into a new environment, every couple of years, or just, and maybe you'll do it once, right? It definitely a culture shock because you're used to a certain way of life, and then you get to this country and it's totally different, right? Um, things are smaller. Government works is not as efficient, right? But other things are great, right? The food is very is organic, or they value work life balance, and want to make sure you get time off and that kind of thing, your vacation, and they know they understand work is important, but they also understand that health, excuse me, is much more important. Okay, so you have these different things you have to get accustomed to if you become an expat. Okay. Education and skill levels. Companies with foreign operations locate in countries where they can find suitable employees. Education and skill levels of countries, labor force affect how and the extent to which companies want to operate there. In countries with a poorly educated populations, companies can limit their activities to low skill, low wage jobs. Okay, so you see where education really kicks in, right? In that if you have a community or society in which education is not important, then you're not going to be really looking for any high technically skilled folks, right? It's not going to be a plethora of folks that are well educated in anything. As far as in a formal setting, right? They may get the education or the skill set via experience and that kind of thing, but they're not going to get it to from a book, right? Because education is not really that important. It's there, it's a requirement, but at the same time, it's not something that many instances that depending on the country that they look at as important, right? Everything you need to learn, I can show you, right? If I'm a farmer, if that's our society, we're a rural agrarian environment, agrarian society. Why do I need to go to school, right? I can learn everything I need to learn or need to know by being in the field, by farming, by running the farm, by helping, you know, uh, the family in maintaining the farm. So what's the importance of going to school? I can learn to add here, right? So you have to really figure out what is the person's long game, right? Is the long game is the long game to stay there in that country and just kind of do what run your farm and live your life that way? The long game is to get out of there and do other things. So it depends on the person's perspective what their goals in life are, right? What they want to do, right? How they want to live their life, right? The economic system provides many incentives or disincentives for developing the value of the labor force. In developed countries with great wealth, labor costs are relatively high. This impacts compensation and staffing practices. Income tax differences between countries make pay structures more complicated when they cross national boundaries. Excuse me. So pay is a big issue, right? And depending on what city you're working in, it might the labor cost is going to be super high, right? So when we talk about a pay for certain jobs, or you go overseas to London or Japan or something like that, or Germany, right? You're going to get a decent wage, right? You're going to get a nice wage, but you also have to think about the tax implications, right? And do you pay taxes here in the United States and in Germany, right? What happens then? So you have to really understand what's going on, right? And the economic system may be more favorable in other countries than it is the United States, right? So for instance, like Australia, I know that part of their compensation is that it's tied to seniority. So typically, the older you are and the longer you've been at a company, the more money you make, right? So if I have to hire for a new position and there's a 50-something-year-old as compared to 30-something-year-old, if I hire a 50-something-year-old, I have to pay that 50-something-year-old a certain pay, and it's going to be higher than the 30-something-year-old. So there's a value on experience there, right? But the thing is that kind of works sometimes against the older folks, because now if I'm an employer and I need to hire somebody, am I okay with hiring a younger person, who knows a little less but knows enough, as compared to an experienced person who's older who have to pay more, right? So you're probably gonna go with the younger person, a little less experienced, but has enough to get you by, right? It depends on the severity of the situation, right? How dire do they want somebody, and how what level of person are they looking for, right? Political legal system. Countries' laws often dictate the requirements for HRM practices, training, compensation, hiring, firing, and layoffs. An organization that expands internationally must gain expertise in the host country legal requirements and ways of dealing with its legal system. Organization will hire one or more host country nationals helping the process. So it's important, when you go into these countries, that you understand what the legal challenges, legal hurdles, just the legal system itself. What does it look like, right? What's it look like if someone commits a crime, and which crimes, get what time, or what is the punishment associated with that crime? And then are crimes that are, done in certain places, jurisdiction, are those subject to different rules and laws, right? Are expats subject to different rules and laws? You know, what what is the burden of proof? Who has to do what? If it's a white collar crime, what happens then, right? What are the rules for that? And so you have to understand all that, and understand the politics of the country also, right? What's the government like, right? What are the leaders like? What are the objective of the country, right? Are they a a society, a government based in religion, right? Or are they just secular, and government's the government, and church and state are always separated, right? So you have to understand, those little nuances, right? Human resource planning and global economy. Human resource planning involves decisions about where and how many employees need for each international facility. Decisions about where to locate include considerations such as the cost and availability of qualified workers. These considerations must be weighed against financial and operational requirements. Other location decisions involve outsourcing, right? So again, when we move into another country, we have to look at our requirements, right? What is that we're going to be doing here? What do we need to do it, right? And where can we find those people? Yeah. And then when we start asking those questions and getting answers for that, then we can kind of figure out, okay, can we actually make this move? How much is it going to cost us to move and get a presence overseas, right? So we have to think about those things. What's it going to cost us as far as getting the right talent, and is that talent accessible in the area we're going to be in? Okay. Criteria for selection of employees for foreign assignments. All right. So when you're looking at, who is going to go on these, foreign assignments, right, overseas, there's a couple of things you're going to look at, right? You want to figure out the person's demeanor as far as, are they patient, are they flexible, are they open-minded, right? Are they sociable? People, want to talk to them. Uh, are they, do they take the initiative? Are they, some people need to be prompted to do certain things. Are they, excuse me, uh, are they self-motivated, right? So you have to ask all these questions, right? But here's a quick checklist, right? Competency in employees' area of expertise, right? You need that. Somebody has to be competent in what they're doing in that area, because normally they're going to be there alone, right? It's going to be one or two, or maybe they're going in the supervisory or managerial or an executive role, right? Because they probably rely up to be getting a foreign assignment. So, excuse me. So you want to make sure that that person is competent in their area of expertise, right? Ability to communicate verbally, non-verbally in a foreign country, right? That bit is directly tied to understanding the culture, right? Taking time to, find out what the nuances of the language are, right? What are some of the, the body language, things that you should avoid? What colors should you not wear? That's stuff like that, right? What should you not say? Okay. Flexibility, tolerance of ambiguity, and sensitivity to cultural differences, right? So as I said before, flexibility, gotta have it, right? Gotta be able to bend. Tolerance of ambiguity, right? Having patience, right? Having patience with uncertainty, right? Being able to, kind of live in the confusion, right? To be like, yes, I'm confused, but I'll figure it out. And whatever the next challenge is, I'll take that one on too, right? Understanding that there's a learning curve and that you may be in a state of chaos for a little bit till you get your wits about you. Okay. Sensitivity to cultural differences, right? Understanding and respecting other people's cultures, right? Trying to learn the language, right? Trying to speak the language to them, okay? Being courteous and being observant and and adhering to their customs, right? To their holidays, to their um, you know um, demeanor, or when you're out and about, right? When you're not at home, when you're in the streets, how can you behave, right? How is it, between genders, as far as that kind of thing, right? As far as like holding hands, and so you have to be sensitive to that. Okay. Motivation to succeed and enjoyment of challenges, right? Because in the foreign assignment, you're definitely gonna have challenges, right? You're gonna have challenges because you're, the lead guy. Maybe you're not, or gal. But the whole point is that you're not gonna have too many people to lean on. Okay, so there's gonna be a lot of challenges, right? From just understanding the area that you're in, the region that you're in, their custom and culture, and understanding also what is the culture of the internal organization, right? Is the internal, organizational culture the same as it's in the States, or is it more like the host country, right? And so understanding that and getting, understanding those challenges and those roadblocks. Willingness to learn about the foreign country's culture, language, and customs, support from family members, right? So it's important that you have support from the people that support you, right? Your support network. You want to make sure that they are okay with it, that that we're going to a different place, because in most cases people take their family with them. Okay. And so it's a big decision that has to be agreed upon by everyone in the family. Okay. Emotional psychosocial, excuse me. This is an emotional cycle associated with a foreign assignment, right? So, like anything else, right? You're going through change. There's going to be some periods that you experience, right? So here's the cycle that generally people go through on a foreign assignment, right? Say the honeymoon, because you get there, you're excited, you're checking stuff out. You're like, wow, this is, this is fake great. I'm in, wherever, you know. Then you hit culture shock, right? Because you go do something and realize like it's a totally different process from how they do it in the States, right? Or from your home, right? You're like, oh my God, this is really, it takes 2 weeks to get, cable or to get, a phone. Uh, you know, uh, what is this about cars? And there's a lot of things that you get hit with that you're like, oh, okay, I'm in a different place, right? Then you have recovery, right? You kind of get over it, but you still are, trying to, find your way as far as, your balance internally. And so you're getting there, you're picking up on the nuances, you're picking up on some of the cultural, cues, right? And then from there you go to adjustment. You kind of fall into your space, right? You start to, know the country, know the people on a different level, right? Start to notice certain things, and you start to understand who they are and how their culture exists. Okay. So training and development programs should be effective for all participating employees, regardless of their country of origin. When organizations hire employees to work in a foreign country or transfer them to another country, the employer needs to provide the employees with training on how to handle challenges associated with working in a foreign country. And so this is all true. Always want training developing, but there's some instances where we don't necessarily get training developing. When I told you I was in the Marine Corps for a while, and we get sent overseas in different countries on a regular basis, okay, on a day-to-day basis. And so, we go into a foreign country, for the first time, it's shocking, and definitely getting some training prior to going would have been helpful. Okay, language training and cultural training. But the thing is that as a military member, when you go into a foreign country, we rely upon the people that are already there to kind of school and train the newbies, right? The people that are just coming in, and so we don't necessarily have that. But for in the civilian sector, right, you're gonna have that training, right? It may be a couple months, right? It'll be some portion of it will be cultural, other portion of it will be about the society and the government and that kind of thing. The other would be a language piece where they give you try to teach you some of the basics of the language so you can at least maneuver a little bit, right? That kind of thing. Okay. So effects of cultural and training design. Okay, so depending on the cultural dimension, uh, you know, you are as a country, this is how it impacts the training. Okay, so delivering training in other countries, it really is kind of the not that's not the same, but it has different things, right? So first one is know your goals, clarify what overseas training is supposed to achieve. All right. And so kind of you want to kind of set the tone, let people know, hey, this is what we're trying to do. This is why you're here, right? And this is, why we chose you, okay? Or you got. Consider international differences among trainees when developing a training plan, right? So there may be a diverse group of folks that are part of the training, the training from foreign countries or foreign assignments because they're from a different place, right? And so you may have to tailor the training for them a little different because you have to address, religious differences, cultural differences, just day to day, differences. Okay. Keep an eye on quality. Overseas trainers should be meet the same quality standards as training at headquarters, right? So you want to make sure that the training is on par with what you would give in the States or in your domestic setting. Um, so you want to make sure that they're getting the same thing overseas, right? It's just going to be switched a little bit to be more related to the country that you're in. Be clear about standards for confidentiality and intellectual property. No local laws that affect training programs. Okay. All right. So for foreign assignment, will you consider taking a foreign assignment for 6 months to a year duration? A equals yes, B equals no. When you take on foreign assignment, what do you want to do? It was just a little test they were giving. All right. So cross cultural preparation, right? This training to prepare employees and their family members for assignment in a foreign country. The training covers all three phases of an international assignment: departure, assignment, and return home. Okay. All right. So performance management, right? Different in some countries as compared to a number in other countries, right? So establishing publishing management methods in other countries, organizations have to consider legal requirements, local business practices, and national cultures. Differences may include which behaviors are rated, how the extent to which performance is measured, who performs the rating, how feedback is required, right? And so you see the difference already where we have to come up with an evaluation that makes sense, right? But we probably need to have one for each different group of folks, maybe. I don't know, right? Because we're looking at, what are the top five things that you need to rate a person on? Maybe different, in India as compared to Japan, right? Or the United States as compared to Germany, right? You know, how do we rate somebody, right? On a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever scale it is, right? And how hard do we grade them, right? Are we a little more lenient and say, oh, yeah, they made a few mistakes, but it's okay, right? So, and then who performs the rating, right? Is it the direct supervisor? Is it the supervisor above him? Is it a self-rating system? It could be a different number of different things, right? And how feedback is required, right? How do I, get that person to tell me what they're thinking and in response to their performance evaluation or just things that they see that, in the workplace that they think maybe, could be um, uh, corrected or maybe need some remedial training or something, right? Compensating an international workforce, market pay structures can differ substantially across countries in terms of both pay level and the relative worth of jobs. This creates a dilemma for global companies. Should pay levels and differences reflect what workers are using to in their own countries? Should pay levels and differences reflect the earnings of colleagues in the country of the facility or earnings at the company headquarters? So again, this is really a question about what the standards, what the norm is in that particular area, right? So if you're in a smaller metropolitan area and the going rate is you know $15 by an hour by law, right? And so but we know that for that same job overseas or back at home, we're paying $30 an hour. Okay. All right. So what should we do about that? Should we pay that person the rate that we're paying, the states at headquarters, or should we pay them, the local rate, right? Or do we should split that somewhere in the middle? Okay. Because we want to, retain the best folks that we can, but we also want to stay within the constructs of the pay range or pay the market rate. Okay. Earning selected occupations in 3 countries. All right. Thousands of dollars per year. All right. So if you look at, let me see here. So the country, okay, Germany, South Korea, Mexico. All right. Germany has the plumbers make. I'm confused as to what this is. Let me see. Yeah. Okay. So plumbers make 45,000 in Germany, 20,000 per year, and uh, look like 6,000 in Mexico, right? But if we go and we look at a bus driver, they make a lot. Bus drivers make a lot in South Korea. Jesus, wow, yeah, all right. Bus driver in South Korea. Wow. Okay, not too bad. All right, not too bad. But you can see a difference because bus drivers do not make $80,000 in the United States. I don't think so, but I would double check that. Okay. Compensation decisions affect the company's costs and ability to compete. The challenge of competing with organizations in low wage countries can be very difficult. This is about benefits when taking into account the laws of each country involved, as well as employees' expectations and values in those countries. Right? Average hours worked in selected countries per year. South Korea works 2,500 hours per year. United States is the next. Japan, UK, the Netherlands is um, the least, huh? So if you look at kind of the countries from top to bottom, um, you can kind of see the pattern of you know degrees of different lifestyles, right? And more the priorities being more about you, your health, and your wellness, right? Um, and also uh, many ways, a little bit more uh, collectivism also, right? And so Netherlands, you know, almost 14 hours per year as compared to South Korea with 2,500 hours per year. It's a pretty big difference, and we can compare the different lifestyles and maybe can see why they don't work as many hours, right? Because of the way that their society views life. So international labor relations on an international scale involve differences in laws, attitudes, economic system, and differences in negotiation styles. Organizations establish overall policies and goals for labor relations, overseeing labor agreements and monitoring labor force. The day-to-day decisions about labor relations are usually handled by each foreign subsidiary, right? So labor relations are tough internationally, right? Because you have to really understand the laws and what your stance and your power is as an organization, and also understand you know what you are capable of doing as an employee, right? As far as grievances and that kind of thing, and compensation for certain things, workman's comp, right? um Understanding all that is critical, right? So managing expats, right? Selecting expat managers. Expat managers need technical competence in the area's operation. In addition, many other skills are necessary to be successful in overseas assignment. Ability to maintain positive self-image, ability to foster relationships with host country nationals, ability to perceive and evaluate the host country environment accurately. Okay, so here's some topics for assessing candidates for overseas assignments. And we kind of talked about this already, right? Motivation, adaptability, family considerations, right? Um, Health. I think adaptability and family considerations is probably the topic, the main topics, that would be interested in, that I think lead to understanding who makes for a good manager as far as expats go. Right. So preparing expats, right? Uh, pre-assignment site visit, language trainings, you can tell, compensation benefits, also housing, right? Counseling by returning expats, local sponsorship from host country, right? That local sponsorship is crucial for someone to make a smooth entry into a foreign environment, right? Having someone who's there already, who's kind of a local, or you know an expat there, who's been there for a while, having them make sure you have everything you need and understand how this space works is a valuable tool. Impressions of Americans, comments by visitors to the United States. Americans seem to be in a perpetual hurry. This might be true. The American is very explicit. He wants a yes or no. Okay. The tendency in the United States to think that life is only work hits you in the face. All right. The first time my American friends told me I don't know the answer, I would have to look it up. I was shocked. I asked myself, why is he teaching? In my country, a professor would give the wrong answer rather than admit ignorance. Wow. So you see the difference, in mindset, right? And from different countries based on their culture, right? So you have to be prepared for that. Compensation, right? Always a topic of interest. The balance sheet approach. This approach adjusts the manager's compensation so that it gives the manager the same standard of living as in the home country, plus extra pay for the inconvenience of locating overseas. This approach involves an effort by the global organization to ensure that its expats are made whole, right? And so when we, talk about compensation, I want to get the same pay that I will be getting back at home if the home country, if the host country pays less, right? So I want to make sure that I maintain the same standard of living, right? And I also need to be compensated for being overseas or a different environment that's not my own. Okay. Here's this the balance sheet for determining expat compensation. Okay. Tokyo is the most top priciest cities. Right. I'm sure that's changed now. That's not old, but definitely I don't think it's current. But Tokyo's uh you see New York is no longer one of the top priciest cities. So it's still pricey, but it's not New York anymore. So the index would have to change, right? Let me see. Tokyo, Japan, Osaka, Japan. I have to say Tokyo is very expensive. Been there. London is rather expensive also. I've never been to Hong Kong or Russia, but um, I'm sure that the places are very, very pricey to live in, right? All right, here we have just a figure of international assignment assistance form, right? It probably doesn't look like this in every organization, but a version of this, okay? So you can kind of see, what the person is getting itemized, right? And so then you look at, the monthly base salary, right? Living cost allowance, 1,200 or 1,300 basically, foreign service premium, right? uh, area allowance, so there's no particular extra money for I guess housing. Well, not housing, but this would be an area COLA, I guess, cost of living allowance. Gross monthly salary. Okay, then you have your housing deduction, right? Hypothetical tax, other net monthly salary. So, you know, um, not too bad, I guess. Depending on what the job is and if there are they're taking care of you in other ways, right? So, but that is probably on par with what he was getting in Texas, in Houston, okay, or her. Helping expats return home, right? Repatriation, the process of preparing expats to return home from foreign assignment. Communication and validation, right? We want to make sure the expat receives information, recognize change at home while abroad, and then validation, giving the expat recognition for the overseas service when this person returns home, right? So basically, you want to make sure that you kind of climatize him or bring him in slow and convey to him there's been some things that's changed while you've been gone, right? And of course that's for everyone, okay? And then validation really speaks to making sure you acknowledge that person's service, right? What they did, and what they did for the company, because not every overseas assignment is great, right? And the, having to sacrifice your family, maybe family time, or just being away, is a big deal, right? So people are looking for validation. Okay. In summary, more and more companies are entering international markets by exporting and operating foreign facilities. Organizations therefore need employees who understand customers and suppliers in other countries. They need to understand local laws and customs and be able to adapt their plans to local situation. All right. To do this, organization may hire a combination of parent, host country, and third country nationals. Okay. All right. So this concludes this week's brief. Right. As I said, make sure you get all your work in. Um, I'm not accepting any more late work that's from weeks 1 through 6. Okay. Um, and if there are any questions or concerns, please feel free to email me or text me if it's time sensitive. Okay. Um, make sure you get your work done. Okay. Paper, um, your final quiz, and the LE for this week. Okay. All right. Goodbye.